Hi everyone. So this is, I think, video 2 of our new way of sharing poems with you. It's quite a challenge. And today's poem is called Living Space, which is quite ironic, really, given the situation that we're all in. It's the day after the Prime Minister's announcement that we're essentially on lockdown. So it feels a bit weird to be talking about living space in such a way. So, the first thing I want you to do is pause the video for a second and look at these questions. How would you describe where you live? And then I'd like you to make a mind map, write a short paragraph, describe your house, describe where you are now. You might be sharing a laptop, you might be sharing a living room, you might be sharing the kitchen table, the Wi Fi, the bathroom. We're all experiencing a whole new meaning of what it is to live somewhere. I haven't spent this much time at home since the holidays, and I'm finding that quite a challenge. So pause for a second and make a mind map. Think, what is your living space at the moment? Because I imagine it's also quite a lot more different than it normally is. Okay, so obviously you've done that because why wouldn't you? Um, so Living Space, a poem by Imtiaz Dharker. Sorry. Okay. Now we live in living spaces that are big, generally quite solid, often very modern, I think, around here, new builds from the 60s. But generally speaking, houses and homes and flats are purpose built. They're built for people to have space for sleep, for eating, for washing. But what this poem is about people who don't have those options, who generally speaking live in a world that's actually one room, and that's if they're lucky. So this poem, Imtiaz Dharker, it's called Living Space. She was born in Pakistan. She grew up in Scotland. She lives in Glasgow. Well, she was raised in Glasgow, and now she divides her time between London and Mumbai. She's written 5 collections of poetry. They deal with identity, her as a Pakistani woman, as a Scottish woman. She talks a lot about having been both and neither, and what her role as a woman is, as a Pakistani woman, as a Scottish woman, and as a woman is in society and how she fits into that. She draws on all these multicultural experiences in a lot of her work, and her knowledge of Mumbai is what comes out in this poem. She's also fascinating in terms of cross cultural ideas because what she did, was she married a man of a different religion. He is Hindu and she is Muslim, and from a different part of India. And her family very much struggled to come to terms with that. So her experience of crossing cultural boundaries is extremely intimate as well. So I don't know what you know about Mumbai, probably not much, but here it is in India. Okay, it's a massive, massive country, and Mumbai is a huge, huge city. At the moment, it's got 25 million inhabitants. In 2011, it was 19 million. So that's in 9 years, a huge increase in the number of people in one place, one city. So this is Imtiaz Dharker. Okay, and this is the context, the background to the poem, and it's absolutely vital for understanding this poem at the moment. So this poem is set in a place called Dharavi, not Dharavi and not Dharavi, as I once said. Okay, it's set in a slum on the outskirts of Mumbai. So a slum is a place that's not an official residence. It's not like an address that you have. It's not a flat in a block. It's not a house on a street. It is essentially a more settled refugee camp, if you want to put it that way. The temperature can hit about 40 degrees. Okay, and there's always a shortage of water because if you don't have an official place to live, you can't claim medicine, you can't claim rubbish collections, and you can't have water set up. So all of that informs the poem and what it's about and how it relates to Dharavi and the experience that people who live there have because it's home to a lot of people, as you're going to see. So they're just in a bigger space. You can see here's India and Mumbai is just around there where the little D is. Okay, and there again, you can see it here. Okay. So a couple of images for you once I learn how to use Microsoft PowerPoint. Give me a sec. So here you go. So Dharavi is spread Over an area of 175 hectares. It has a population of 1 million. Mumbai has 25 million. So in this one space, is 1 million out of 25 million. And there's only one toilet per 1,456 people. That's like having basically one toilet in our entire school, which I think you can imagine nobody would enjoy. Okay, you've got 6 people in one bedroom. So if you're currently one of the people sharing a kitchen, sharing a living room, sharing a bedroom, nobody enjoys that. But can you imagine having 6 of you in there and there being no end in sight? Okay, most people also have to go 15 minutes to get any kind of water. There are no running taps. There is no way to get actual connections, okay? So a slum specifically is what's called a squalid and overcrowded urban street or district inhabited by very poor people. Okay, and this poem is about those slums. People migrate from all over India trying to get work in Mumbai in the hopes of a better life, but they don't just have the money to book into the local travel lodge. They'll set up here and hope to earn enough. The problem is the more people there are, the worse the conditions get. So these are some images of these slums, and you can see everything is ramshackle. It's sort of built with whatever they can find. Okay. And one collapse will take down all houses as well. All right. None of this is built well, and that's not criticism. People are doing what they can with what they've got. All the rubbish here because there's no official collections. Okay. I don't know what's in this pipe, but whatever it is not for the people in Dharavi. It's for the people in Mumbai. Again, all these houses just sort of dropped on top of each other. You know, there's plants growing out of them and not intentionally. As you can see, you know, there's very little outdoor space, and what there is taken up with rubbish and people working, or even in this case, obviously not everybody here has enough work. Okay, again, you know, this lady's climbing into her home, which is raised up there, but all of these conditions are basic. So notice the fact that everybody is hemmed in. It's going to be dirty. You can't properly stay clean if there's no running water and you're surrounded by rubbish like that. Okay, and just take a moment to think what kind of a condition that would be. So the fragility, this ease of things falling apart, is what's explored in this poem. The fact that it's almost miraculous that it's even there. Okay, it describes what's called a ramshackle living space. These spaces are created out of corrugated sheets, wooden beams, and tarpaulins. And the Imtiaz Dharker basically says they're a miracle. It's amazing that they exist. So I'm going to look at you, read you this poem. There are just not enough straight lines. That is the problem. Nothing is flat or parallel. Beams balance crookedly on supports thrust off the vertical. Nails clutch at open seams. The whole structure leans dangerously towards the miraculous. Into this rough frame, somebody has squeezed a living space and even dared to place these eggs in a wire basket hung out over the dark edge of a slanted universe, gathering the light into themselves, as if they were the bright, thin walls of faith. That's a really beautiful poem. So I'm going to give you a really quick overview, and then we're going to do some really in-depth analysis of the poem as a whole. So there are just not enough straight lines. There's not enough to go around. You've got this gap between rich and poor. If you're in those slums, you are poor. Okay, is this an ironic title? If we go back to the strut method, there's no living space. The irony of that is that they aren't living, they are existing, they are surviving. Nothing is flat or parallel. There's a complete lack of equality, okay? This tiny stanza here has been squeezed in. Those living spaces are limited. Okay, people in these slums, they live in hazardous conditions. It's not safe. Living somewhere that's about to fall apart, we think it's bad when our plumbing goes a bit dodgy. These people have houses that are about to literally fall to pieces, okay? There's this metaphor I'm going to talk to you about in a bit of these people as eggs, their vulnerability, their fragility, but their potential for life and for hope. I'm going to apologise now for the animation. I clicked a lot of buttons, but I realise it's very, very late 90s at the moment. And then, yes, you've got these images of faith, of optimism. There's a lot of language about light, about hope, which is a big challenge to the way we in the West tend to see parts of the world like India. We normally think of it as a hopeless place, and that's how it's presented in the media. And one thing Imtiaz Dharker is trying to do here is to challenge our perception of what it is to be poor, to be Indian as well, I think, and to be a person in a slum. Oh, and see, the animation's gone again. There's this image of light as hope. So, line one, there are just not enough straight lines. There's a couple of things here. Not enough. There's an inequality. Okay, there's literally not enough to go around. I think there's an exasperation here as well. There's just not enough. She's getting a little bit sick of it. Why isn't there enough? Why have we not got the straight lines that we need? And then this lack of straight lines as well, for me, suggests chaos. If everything isn't straight, bearing in mind we're talking about buildings, they need to be straight, then I think that she's also trying to really make us think about the chaos of an existence like this. Okay, nothing is flat or parallel, beams balance crookedly on supports, thrust off the vertical. So nothing is flat or parallel. There's absolutely no stability. And that's the same for the lives of these residents. If the Indian government decided they could be evicted, they could be sent away, don't know where, but they don't have any right to be there, no legal right. So their lives are unstable. Their homes are literally at a slant. I'm hoping you can see this on the camera. Okay, and that again is this chaos, this uncertainty. Beams balance crookedly on support. So crooked suggests maybe there's something wrong with this society. Is there a criticism here? And it's precarious. Nobody knows what's going on. Nobody knows if this building's going to be up tomorrow, if they're going to be allowed to live there. I mean, you can only imagine the disease is probably rampant as well at the place you can't get clean water. And then I think it's really important here, you've got this word thrust, supports a thrust off the vertical. It's quite a violent image. These people, even though they have come here searching for a better life, are to some extent rejected by society. Okay, the government hasn't welcomed them in, it hasn't given them water, it hasn't given them proper status necessarily. They're rejected by society, they're on the outskirts where the rubbish is, just as much as these beams are also thrust away from the vertical, from the stable. So next line, nails clutch open seams. I think this is a fantastic bit of metaphor here. I think it suggests the desperation. The nails are clutching at things. They are grasping for every little bit of hope. But an open seam, we're talking about like an open hole in wood or a gap between two things. So they are trying to hold this world together and they're inherently failing. You might remember in A Christmas Carol, Scrooge being clutching as well about grabbing things but not being able to. Okay, these aren't normal buildings, is what we're reminded of here. They're built with good intentions, they're built with hope, but they could break at any minute. There's no certainty in this sentence at all. The whole structure leans dangerously towards the miraculous. At no point does this poem let us forget that these are people in danger in their homes. Their living space is not their living room or their kitchen or their bedroom. It is a home that could fall apart. Okay, but all of a sudden we're getting this language miraculous. It's gone from this desperation to almost religious language. A miracle is a blessing from God. Okay, and what they accomplish just by staying upright, Imtiaz Dharker is pointing out, is a miracle. It is amazing that they are able to stay up, that people can live in these places. And she's trying to show us some hope here and some faith. Now, this is the stanza that is squeezed in between the first and the third, and we're going to look at that later. Okay. This stanza is squeezed in, and these words are squeezed and framed. They remind us it's all makeshift. It's all impermanent. A frame is an unfinished thing. Squeezing something in does not suggest it's necessarily meant to be there. And so, again, we're reminded of the work, the effort that is going in, but the fact that it's probably not going to last. And then, who is this someone? Is it the person who's building their homes? Is she reflecting on a god and a deity? She's Muslim, but there are lots of different religions in India, so I don't believe she's referring to a specific god. But who is this someone? Is it divine intervention has given them a place to live? Or is it about the people that make these homes? So this is coming into the third stanza now. She says, they've even dared to place these eggs in a wire basket, fragile curves of white. And food is often stored like this. It'll be hung from a basket from the ceiling to save space and to stop, they're eggs, to stop them getting trampled on. But eggs, if you think about it, are fragile things that hold chickens. Okay, they hold baby chicks. So they are also a symbol of love, of rebirth. If you think about the symbolism of Easter and why chocolate eggs are sold, apart from because Cadbury's told us to, it's the fact that they hold hope. And so these eggs become a metaphor for the hope that these residents have, the trust they're placing in this home. They're hanging their food from this precarious place. So even living there is an act of faith and trust. And they are hung out over the dark edge of a slanted universe. So we're never allowed to forget the danger these people are in. Not that it's a bad place, but it's dangerous. And we see that in the fact that it's a dark edge. However, the universe suggests that this is their whole world. This is everything to these people. Quite rightly, your home is your everything. And it will be when you don't have much. But we're never allowed to forget that it isn't quite what it could be because it's still slanted. Though to them, it is everything. Okay. Gathering the light into themselves as if they were the bright, thin walls of faith. So there's a lot in this. So the fact that they are gathering the light, obviously this is all metaphorical, but they're gathering, it's a verb, okay? They're choosing to take this light, to take this faith. Light in most cultures is seen as a symbol of hope, often of religion. And I think that's what she's doing here. They're taking in this light and this hope. The bright, thin walls of faith. So their existence is down to faith. It's not down to good building as much as they would like it to be. It's down to the hope that they can exist there. The fact that these walls are thin just constantly reminds us that anything can happen. It could change at any time. But their existence is a miracle. And Imtiaz Dharker is in all of these people. They live on faith and trust. And they live on hope. And they have strength because of that. They're not weak. They are amazing as far as she is concerned. So, poem structure. I'm going to read this again because we've just had it in bits. There are just not enough straight lines. That is the problem. Nothing is flat or parallel. Beams balance crookedly on supports thrust off the vertical. Nails clutch open seams. The whole structure leans dangerously towards the miraculous. Into this rough frame, someone squeezed a living space and even dared to place these eggs in a wire basket. Fragile curves of white hung out over the dark edge of a slanted universe, gathering the light into themselves, as if they were the bright, thin walls of faith. So, again, brace yourself for the really terrible animation. The first stanza is about chaos, uncertainty, and precariousness. Everything is clutching, balancing, leaning. There's no sense of stability. There's no rationale. Okay? Apparently I decided to do a wipe. The second stanza is squeezed in between the other two, just as the residents of Dharavi have squeezed themselves in to this space. Okay, they've literally squeezed in. The first and the third stanzas are the same length. There's a sense to them. This 3-line stanza is just stuck in the middle. And it almost feels like it doesn't belong there, just as these people live in a place that isn't made for them, that they've had to make for themselves. And the final stanza is about the miracle of their existence. They're daring to do it. It's fragile, but it's their universe. They're gathering light. And they're themselves the bright, thin walls of faith. Their faith is a miracle. How they think they can survive here is not stupid or preposterous. It is amazing that they've got that hope. But that's what Dharker wants us to feel. So there's a couple of semantic fields that are really useful for understanding this poem. If you don't remember, a semantic field is a group of words with similar meanings or associations. So here you've got a semantic field of maths, essentially of mathematical language. So we've got straight lines, flat, parallel, balance, actually, vertical. Okay, but almost the more of those words in this semantic field of kind of mathematical language that we hear, the more we realise the absence of it in Dharker. There's another one, again, brace yourself for the animation. We've got this idea of balancing, of precariousness. Okay, and this is another semantic field. So beams are balanced crookedly, they're on supports, it leans, it clutches, it's squeezed, it's hung over, it's slanted. It's all in a place that can't last. She's not saying this slum is doomed, but what she's saying is everything is held together by hope. Because you don't want to be somewhere where it's squeezed in or the nails are clutching the wood together. You don't want to be somewhere where everything's balanced crookedly. Their universe is slanted. So all of that reminds us of this, I keep saying precarious, but this uncertain nature. And apparently I just changed the colour there because I can't use PowerPoint. So the key ideas in this poem are about the disorder and the chaos of the slum. Okay, the fact that there is no rationale, there are no straight lines, there are no streets, there are not even, there's no house numbers. It won't have a postcode, and that these buildings are fragile. One stiff breeze and the entire place could go down. One person knocks the wrong support and the entire building falls down. And that makes life just as fragile as the buildings, especially again because these people have no water, very little food, and whatever work they can get, which won't be a lot and won't be well paid. There's a huge inequality between the rich and the poor, the rich in Mumbai and the poor in these slums. And there's not enough. And that's that first line that's really important there. The faith and hope of these people could be easily shattered, but it hasn't been yet. However, their faith and hope is in these buildings that are basically only a matter of time away from collapsing at any 1 minute. And this poem is about the faith and bravery of the desperately poor. And that's what Dharker wants to celebrate. She also wants us to be aware. She wants us to realise this inequality, because it's very easy not to be aware of these things. But at the same time, she's trying to challenge a certain amount of Western assumption that all that people in other parts of the world, all that people in poor countries are about is their poverty and their lack of things. But actually, she's showing us by placing those eggs in the basket, by living in these places, they have a huge amount of faith and bravery. And we shouldn't forget that. We shouldn't ignore that. We should make sure we remember that these are people with faith and hope. Oh, so that is my presentation on living space. I really hope it's been useful. Thank you for your patience with my use of PowerPoint. I'm now going to work